just to make sure. I have no idea, but I think we're good. Mike, how you doing, man?
Doing good, Joe. How about you?
Great, great. I know we've talked a lot over the past year about trying to get our schedules to align for this, so I appreciate it. Finally, able to make it work, and excited to deep dive with you. For folks that are going to watch this or watching live with us at some point, mind filling us in? Give me a little bit of your background and kind of why we're going to most likely talk here today.
Sure, sure. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
And great to be here today too. So thanks for the opportunity.
Yes.
Background, short version, serial entrepreneur. Spent the early 2000s as a executive coach and facilitator for Vistage International. Ran three mastermind groups, two CEO, one key executive. The lessons that came out of those 5 years doing that is what led me to what I do today, which is my company XP3 Talent, and the creation of what is now known as the XP3 Talent System. So the inspiration back then was I learned working with all those different organizations that you got to have a system and a process for everything that you do to scale consistently, successfully, and profitably. Um, and I also learned, interestingly, that most business problems are people problems in disguise, right? Because if you got those problems, it usually means you don't have the people who know how to solve them. And the proof of that was that's what that group was about. The members would bring their issues to the group would help them solve it. Out of 12 or 15 members in a group, there was probably two or three people in there that have already been there, done it, speaking from experience. But even if an issue was brought up that nobody dealt with, you put 12, 15 smart people in a room, you can come up with two or three good ideas, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And what I really learned that they would present a cash problem, a marketing problem, production problem. When we drill down to understand the problem and the root of it, it was usually because the person behind driving it or lack of driving it, right? So with those two things, I said, well, where's the people system, right? So I found hiring systems, training systems, but I never found an end-to-end system that connected the dots through the full employee life cycle. So that was the inspiration back in around 2007, 8 for the idea. Started creating the XP3 Talent System first in 2010, officially launched the first version in 2018. So that's how I got here.
And then the copy I have says second edition.
Oh yeah, so the book. So 2019, the book behind me there was the first version that came out. Everyone kept saying, "Hey, put all this stuff in a book." So I had no idea about writing books. So I said, "Okay." Actually hired kind of an editor guy that helped me out, who still is now my fractional marketing officer now. But this book, the new one, the second edition, that just came out a few months ago, was actually written as part of the implementation of the XP3 Talent System. So so I kind of simplified the first book, scaled it back a lot. I also learned a lesson going to being part of the National Speakers Association, listening to a guy talking about speakers writing books, and he said, I learned that people are really good at buying books, but not quite as good at actually reading them. He goes, so we don't have the time in today's world, right?
Yeah.
So he said, leave out all the fluff, just give them the meat, what they need. And I took that approach with this book. And there's only 5 chapters. It's about 200 pages. You could get through it in a weekend. Well, you got it, so you know
Yep.
it is. But I really kind of wrote it as a way for people that want to try to self-implement the talent system. But we also, as part of our talent mastery program, where we're helping to implement it, it's like, that we have a learning management system that has these little 5 to 10 minute videos. And then we say, and then read these pages or this chapter out of the book, and you'll have a full understanding of that topic. Then we do a little live implementation coaching. The system's input at the company quickly. In fact, it's designed to be done within 90 days. So that's the books.
So you mentioned before we even, or kind of in the beginning, which is obviously it's mentioned in the book right away, about 90%. It could be off on the percentages, but the problems with it are people problems.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, like I said, it's like, someone would present, I got a marketing problem or a production problem, right? Or whatever, cash flow problem, doesn't matter. In that group, we would then drill down. All right, tell me more, Joe. Tell me about the problem. What's going on? Why is this? What have you done about it? Right? and going around the room asking those clarifying questions, which the lesson there is seek first to understand before being understood and giving advice, right? We found out behind, and I wouldn't say it's 90%, but I'd say most, right? So maybe 70% of the problems. It really turned out to be a people problem, meaning you had those problems because you didn't have the person or people who know how to, address those problems and put in the solution or avoid the problems in the first place. So a lot of times it came down to that, and it's like, well, does this person have the knowledge and skill set to be able to address that? Have you done something to help them gain that knowledge and skill? And so the solution also became help the person get better and raise their capabilities, and you'll find that some of those problems, if not all of them, will go away. So that's what I mean by that.
Do you find that it ends up being the wrong person a majority of that time?
It's not necessarily always the wrong person, but it was just that they were lacking skill sets, systems to follow, right?
Yeah.
So maybe the company didn't have a system in place. Well, why don't you have a system in place? Because nobody knew to put that system in place. Well, that goes back to, okay, do you have a person who understands that and knows how to do it, right? And those don't have to be internal people either, right? There's lots of third-party companies you can partner with that, and that's what I love about the home improvement business, right? There's a system and a process for everything, and if you just open your mind up and listen and you're coachable, right, you can learn all the systems and processes to run a very successful organization, which is, I told you, and for your listeners, I just, because, I've been working with home improvement contractors now and commercial contractors for probably about 8 years. It's been our primary focus. But I threw my hat into the ring this summer and started my own high-end deck building company. So, and it really just to kind of prove that, and again, I wouldn't say I'm a construction expert at all, right? But if I just follow everyone else and listen to what they teach me on how to implement the marketing systems, the sales systems, the production systems, right? Then it's hard to fail. So.
No, it's the processes are there. If they're there and they work, but it is that I think there's a knowing doing gap, just like you hear in anything, but it is fairly systematized. The thing that I like about the book for me is I like how you ground everything kind of in science.
Yeah.
You don't find very many books in our world that have as many footnotes with all the cited, documentation and proof to back it up. But speaking of the science, the behavioral side or the assessments.
Yep.
Let's talk about that for a second, because that's a touchy subject.
Yep.
And I don't mean that in a way, but like depending on which HR friend you're talking to this week, some are like absolutely not, or not absolutely not, but tread lightly. Obviously, there's a lot of there can be liability there if it's not handled correctly. But there's even some out there as far as saying, hey, it's not conclusive.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my question I want to ask is how do you go about handling that to ensure, hey, I've got what stage of the process is the assessment done that you find best? And then 2, let's assume the assessment doesn't reflect for the role you're hiring for. Where do we go from here?
Yeah. So actually I'm gonna step it back a couple of steps and to answer this question. So first off, the problem with personality assessments, right, which are technically known as psychometric instruments, is that most people don't understand how they're built, how they work, what they're really measuring, and most importantly, how do you utilize them effectively, right?
Yep.
Because if you did understand that, and what I see in most organizations, they only use them for hiring. And if you're only using them for hiring, you're limiting yourself and not getting the full ROI on what these really do. Because while they're helpful in hiring, they're way more effective with your existing employees, right? And you said, go back to the people question you asked me earlier about, was it the wrong person, right? So it really comes down to, and then using these assessments, let me back up. I'll say it this way. personality assessments do not dictate or measure whether or not a person can do the job successfully. That's the first thing people need to understand, right?
Yep.
Your knowledge and skill dictate if you can do the job, right? What behavior is really doing, and using it in the hiring process or with your existing employees. First thing is, to use it properly, you need to have a benchmark of what you're measuring the individual against. So that whatever tool you're using, whether it's DISC, the predictive index, we use, as you know, a tool called the MPO, and there's dozens, hundreds of them out there. Most are pretty good, but they're only as good as the people using it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing you need to do is make sure that tool has a target job profile that you can customize and build and say, hey, for your project manager, Joe, here, what are the behavioral attributes that are required to be successful? And things like attention to detail or compliance, right? Maybe some strategic thinking, right? Or structured detailed thinking. So you figure out what those are, and the closer you can match the candidate's personality to those required traits, the more the person will enjoy doing the work. Has nothing to do with how well they're going to do the work, right? Again, So take as a project manager. You can teach me to be a project manager, right?
Yeah.
Which I'm in the process of learning. And I like to think I'm smart enough to learn and coachable. So I could learn to be a good project manager. When you do the behavioral requirements for a PM, right? Think about 70, 80% of their job is taking care of all the details, right? So you can teach me to do the details, but what you can't teach me to do is enjoy doing detail work. You can't change my way of thinking. And by the way, that's what personality assessments measure. They measure how your brain's wired to think, how you feel about what you're thinking about, and that combination predicts how you will behave in most situations. So for me and most entrepreneurs, we're more big picture, strategic, and salespeople, particularly too, also are more strategic in their thinking, right? The old, hey, doesn't work out, we'll find a plan B, right? We can always be nimble, right? Where those really natural detailed thinkers, right? Some of the better PMs out there, like, no, if you do it right the first time and pay attention to all the details, you don't need a plan B. Hence, measure twice, cut once.
Yeah.
Right? So again, you can teach me how to do the details, but you cannot teach someone who's like me or you, maybe, that's strategic in our thinking, to enjoy doing that detail work. And like I said, an hour or so a day, I can be great at the details. But if I had to do it, 6, 7 hours of every day as my job, right? You're not going to get consistent performance out of me, no matter how good my knowledge and skill is. So that's the first thing people need to understand, is what those tools really measure, and then how to use them properly. So what they really measure is this person a personality fit from the standpoint, will they enjoy doing the behavioral attributes of the job day in and day out consistently?
I didn't realize. Okay, that makes. I forgot that part in the book. You mentioned. You actually just mentioned it too. There was. I remember somewhere. I don't know. I don't want to say the wrong chapter, but you had said there's 2 things required for anybody that you hire, and it was. I want to say. You talked about the intelligence enough to learn whatever it is you got to teach them, and then obviously the coachability.
Exactly. Yep. And which are 2 different things, right?
Yeah. Do you discover that best in? Is that discovered in your interview process, or does that have anything to do with the? Okay.
Yes, your interview process should include those 2 factors. Always look at, are they smart enough to learn what you have to teach them, right? And you should be teaching them a lot of stuff. I don't care if they were the best salesperson for your competitor's company or the best PM for your competitor's company, right? That sells the same product right down the street. You have your own unique processes, systems, way of doing stuff, your own culture you've built they need to fit to. And those are all things they have to learn, right? So you could be the smartest guy in the world, but if you're a know-it-all, I can't teach anything. And we've all dealt with those people who are know-it-alls, and, first day on the job, they're trying to tell you, well, Joe, here's a better way of doing it. Like, dude, we've been doing it 10 years this way. It works really well. We've been successful, right? Yeah. But it's not the way they did it before. There are different ways to be successful. You have your ways, other companies have theirs. So they have to be able to learn yours. The faster they can learn those things, the faster they're going to be a productive member of your team.
Yeah, that's That's you just brought up that point. I didn't realize that's where I probably learned it from. Like you said, it's you can have all the experience, same product, same everything, but you don't know our process, obviously our culture, and I remember reading about it, and I remember sitting there going, "That's a quick way to introduce some serious friction by bypassing the onboard process just because of existing experience."
Yeah. Well, another thing I'll add to that too, that would be good for everyone to know is like, when we're hiring, we're always looking for those, A players, right? The best of the best. Well, we know for a fact through all the research that of the working population of the world, there's only probably 15-20% of the population that are natural A players, right?
Yeah.
And if you're that good, a lot of those people are also, running their own companies or will probably eventually, right?
Yeah.
Not all, but a majority. But if you just take the approach, recognizing that a majority of the workforce, the 50-60% are out there, most of the people you're going to be interviewing are B players, right? Or what we like to actually call high potential players, right? So that means that you must be a training and coaching organization to be able to train those people on your systems, processes, methodologies, culture, right? And even if you get lucky enough to hire one of those A players, right? You got to think about what makes an A player, right? Obviously, peak performance, right? Consistently, and whatever the role is. But just because you were an A player for the other company doesn't necessarily you're going to be an A player for my company, because we have different approaches, different systems, right? So, and you may not adapt to my system. I just hired a sales guy, for our debt company, and I'm trying to show him the systems that I've been taught in the industry that work, and he's like, well, he's pushing back a little bit. He's like, well, that's not how I always done it, And I said, that's great. I know you were good at what you did, but this is a system we know works really well. So if you can learn this, you can get from where you are here to up to here.
There's a great oh, go ahead. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off. Sorry.
No, that was it. Go ahead.
No, it just made me think of there's a great, and I reference him often in the group, so I'm sure people can roll their eyes. But Nick Saban talks about it when he was hiring coaches. He's like, I'm not hiring you to do what you did at LSU. I'm hiring you to do what we do here at Alabama.
Exactly.
Right? Because again, one, because it's got to align with everything else. You're just one of, whatever, 50 reps or 50 this or 40 of that. So that's a big, again, I think we see it commonly. Was it in the book or in our conversation you talk about, because I thought it's pretty unique. You give us stories of the emergency room nurse and the ability to, somebody basically, I want to say the story was related to somebody new to an industry and how you're able to train them, and it expedites that. And I could be kind of mixing it up, but you were talking about how you're able to take somebody through a structured process into a top performer in, a consolidated amount of time. I thought it was in the book. I could be completely mixing up a couple.
Yeah, well, I talked about it, but I don't remember talking about an ER nurse or anything in the process.
Yeah, maybe I probably ad-libbed. So,
what you may have confused there is my background was in emergency medicine, in pre-hospital medicine.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where I first learned to be a trainer and coach, and that's where some of the science came from. Having that training to understand the science part, and then how does that apply to the work world, right? But what I talk about, which I think you're getting to, is in the onboarding of new employees, right? What you're doing is go back to what I say about the A and B players. You're understand, even that A player that was there is now a B player with high potential to be an A player at your company. Well, you have to transform all those new hires into A players. And what that really means is that you're transforming them into be passionate, collaborative company advocates, people who love what they do. They believe in your mission and look forward to coming to work every day to accomplish it. They're excited about the vision that you have, right, of what you're trying to create over the coming years. And they want to be a part of that because, and this is really critically important, they understand, and the reason they're going to get excited about your success in your company and helping you get there is because they understand what that means for them in return. I help you get there. That's going to help me grow and evolve as the company grows and evolves. But most companies, they kind of take hey, do a good job, Joe, and then we'll talk about what's next for you. That doesn't work.
Yeah,
So
no, do you still find very many companies that you work with that don't onboard with like sales reps pertaining? I mean, obviously the group's predominantly salespeople, so nothing against
yeah,
project.
I mean, most companies have sales training programs, but if you take
Yeah.
it outside of sales, most companies don't offer any training. What do you do for everyone else? But here's another mistake in that transformation that's made. Most people only train people for the job they were hired for. You're a sales guy. I'm going to train you to do sales. We've got a great sales training program, right? You're a
Yeah.
PM. I'm going to train you to be a PM if you do training on that. So when you're training people, you need to focus on 3 objectives above everything else. In order to transform them into passionate, collaborative company actors.
Write this down. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm listening.
All right. Number 1 is you make sure it's a great learning experience. People learn different ways, right? And they got to be open-minded to it. But you need to make sure the learning process is fun, it's structured, it's organized, right? You're not shooting from the hip. You have a detailed plan. All those things go towards the experience. Okay? And there's a lot more, but that's a short version. Read the book, it'll give you all the details. Number 2 objective, help them understand the big picture of the organization rather than just the job you hired them for, right? That doesn't mean you're training them how to do everything else, right? But that they understand, like take your sales reps, right? The first thing that we teach sales reps is about marketing. What does the marketing team do? What kind of dollars do we spend as a company to go into generating those leads, right? As we know, most salespeople complain about, why do I always get the shitty leads, Joe?
Yeah.
Right? Well, what they don't understand is that, hey, we put the same effort and money into generating all the leads, right? We use the same qualifying process to qualify those leads. Some just turn out to be better than others, right? It's a roll of the dice sometimes. But as an organization, we're doing the same stuff, investing the same time, the same money. So they need to understand what goes on, and even the people in marketing that are generating those leads. They need to have a general understanding, like, if you're the social media guy, what are you doing to help? You're the marketing manager, what do you do? Whatever, you're an events person, what do you do to contribute to that? So again, not to the point that they understand how to do the job, but they have an appreciation for what their teammates do and for what the company spends on generating those leads. We have found by teaching them that, and you can do it within an hour or 2, right? It's not like it takes a lot of time just to give them that general understanding. Excuse me. But having that understanding breaks down those work silos. The silo from, hey, we're in sales and we weren't out there selling, bringing in the business. You guys wouldn't even have jobs, right? And the production guys are like, yeah, well, if you would stop making promises we can't deliver on, right? And they have this animosity because they don't understand what each other do. And that also leads to the 3rd objective, right? So 1, help them understand the big picture. Train them on everything in the company, not just the marketing. Then, even if it's a marketing person, we teach them about sales a little bit. If it's a production person, the first week or 2 on the job, they should go out on some sales calls just to understand what salespeople do so they have an appreciation, right? Yeah. What you're doing there, remember I said, transform them into passionate, collaborative company advocates. So the collaborative part, the way you accomplish that is by helping them understand what everyone else does and how that relates to my success and vice versa. 3rd objective is to build relationships with as many other people in the organization as possible. The Society for Human Resource Managers, so a lot of the research that we have in there is based on their work. And year over year, they have pointed to one of the number 1 contributing factors to retention is relationships with other employees. So think about, like, you're not going to collaborate with people if I don't even know who those people are, right? Yeah. A lot of people we hire, like I hired Carpenter, and he's like, we put him through this training program. It was 5 days where he learned the big picture of the company. We had him spend time. And by the way, it's not just one person teaching this. Like, I didn't teach them the marketing stuff. I brought the marketing team. Hey, you tell them what you do, right? Yeah. And introduce yourself. Tell them about yourself. How long you been here? Why do you love coming to work every day? You got those pieces are critical to building the relationships, because then you might find out, we have a lot of synergy, and you become friends with that person, which is the best scenario, because with each additional person that they have a friendship with, SHRM data has shown that the retention rates go up incrementally with each relationship.
So go ahead. Go ahead. No.
I was going to conclude saying those 3 objectives are what you need to focus on in that first week or 2 on onboarding training. But notice what wasn't included. It wasn't about training them for the job you hired them for. That's going to happen anyway, right? And it could even start on day 1, some of that training. But understanding that big picture and building relationships is way more important, because what we've also learned, and from some of the science, right? It opens up your mind to learning, because now you've got a bigger interest of and understanding why things happen and why it's important that I do the things the way you're teaching me how to do it.
So no, well, kind of full disclosure, and we won't give names because it's not important, but I didn't know until after you and I formally met, together. You had implemented this program to a company I had started with, and I remember sitting in, let's just say, day 2 of the training and hearing for the first time in my career explain how leads were generated, the whole walkthrough of it. And I was already blown away with day 1 because it was just different, not what I expected. And then day 2, I believe it was, maybe whenever it was a break-in kind of thing where we talked. I'll never forget though. I was like, I've been in this industry at that point for X amount of years. And I'm like, wow, we're really going down the path of how the lead is from start to finish, from set to issue, and what the sources are, and the investment, obviously. And then the other one that I think I didn't realize how important it is the kind of the collaboration, getting them to communicate, because a lot of times sales reps, once they start running appointments, their communication is done text and or email, say with the dispatcher. And if that news isn't positive, right? And it can be perceived, we're not supposed to read into, right? There's no tone in the text. Well, it's not. When you show up to a no-show and you get a text saying, my bad or whatever, and you don't know that person behind that text in advance, that can quickly become, even more, just can spiral out of control. So I didn't realize that now until looking back, tying it all together, why that was done.
Yep, exactly. And it's critically important to open up the person's mind. And you mentioned something too about, the collaboration in the team, right? So one of the things I also wanted to mention and talk about, most entrepreneurial organizations, right, smaller companies, they take pride in being a family-run business, right? And they wear that as like a badge of honor. We're a family business, right? We're a family. Well, I don't know about you, Joe, but my family, like most families, have a lot of dysfunction.
Right.
Right. So, and as we know, mindset is foremost above everything, the mindset you bring to the table. And what I've been trying to get people to understand is that rather, and again, there's good positive attributes about being a family, right? But there's a lot more problems with it than good, right? Because again, if it's your family, and you've got your kids, your spouse working there, right? Then it's like, oh, am I ever going to advance because no way Joe's going to promote his son, right? So there's those kind of challenges, but what we can all agree upon, and you brought it up before about a football team, right? If you really want to be successful and grow in a company, look at yourselves as a high functioning, high performing team, right? Because if you think about it, any high performing team has very little, if any, dysfunction.
Yeah.
Right. And they know the importance of every player on that team has to be really good at their job to support the other players that are next to them. Right. Otherwise, and when you have that one player who's out for themselves, it always ends up bad. Right. So get rid of the family thought and adopt the team approach, and recognize also then as a mindset, you're not a manager of people. If you want to be good, you have to be a coach, right? You got to train, coach, and mentor them. Our friend Brian Gottlieb, right? Brian said, my real success came when I realized we're in the training and coaching business. And then his success escalated dramatically. So
Yeah, I think I posted something in the group around this concept of family versus team for this reason, and I got some harsh feedback, but again, because also look at the side of, as a parent, I enable my daughter. I know I do. I love her. She's always right. Why wouldn't I? You know what I mean? Like, especially at the age of 5, but that may change, but you know what I mean? We tend to protect our loved ones in that sense. And then, yeah, I don't know where probably from you, I heard about it originally, and the concept is true. The team side, it also, for me, it just keeps it professional, right? It's not, just not everybody's is equal around wanting to blend the two anyway. So, and I respect that. That's why I love the team concept. And then, a step further, coaching, which, as I posted the other day, is probably, it's funny. I saw something recently, and it's like, the concept you'll hear people talk about drives me a little bit nuts is when companies put values on walls, and then you realize in the first 10 minutes of meeting them that none of the values on the walls are legit, but whatever, that's fine. But the ones where they're like, oh, well, we put, people first. And I go, well, if we put people first, then how much time are we spending growing and developing these people? Mm-hmm. Right? Because if that doesn't align, then don't tell me you put people first, or let's just invest in our people, because we know it's our people, which I agree, you can't do it yourself. But then why don't we? And what I'm getting at is you bring up coaching, which is between that and accountability, I think are the two biggest things missing in most sales teams from their consistent success. Or usually it becomes reactive versus proactive in the coaching aspect. So that's a good point. The other question I'm trying to find, I thought I wanted to write some of them down because I knew I'd forget to ask you about it. But with the whole model with XP3, but the third phase, the retain side, I don't think this, maybe because it's high turnover, maybe we don't get to that side of it all the time, or we just assume, we just assume that people are fine, especially in the sales aspect, if they're making commissions and they're on their side. What are the challenges here that you see
with retention?
Yeah, to retain really like top performers, making sure they're happy. But and I say happy meaning happiness is a choice. That's the wrong word. But satisfied, content, excited to come to work every day as much as humanly possible at this place of business. What are some of the things that you think are missed there? Because a lot of times you see, or we tie it back to, money, something extrinsic, and it's not.
Yep.
So I just want to I know you talk about it in the book, so.
Yeah, so a couple of things to that, Joe. So you mentioned, extrinsic motivation. Hey, be the top rep, you're going to win this bonus, right? Or, go on the President's Club trip, right? And those are all great things, right? Keep doing those things, they help. But intrinsic motivation, which goes back to some of the science, right? And that's what I was talking about earlier about how you use personality profiles correctly. About, if you align the behaviors of the job with the way the person's wired to think, feel, and behave, their personality traits, they will be intrinsically motivated by that work. That's what I was describing earlier, right? So like, to be a good sales rep, you got to have a sense of urgency, right? You want to close deals. I want it now. I want more of it, right? Yeah. I can teach you that, but if you're not intrinsically wired to be, a urgent, fast-paced, results-oriented person, right? You will not be consistent. And more importantly, you won't enjoy it. In fact, you may hate it. It's like, it's too fast-paced for me. There's too much moving around, too much demand, pressure, right? Yeah. So again, being a good salesperson is the knowledge and skill. Do you know a structured sales process? Do you know how to connect with people? Do you know how to overcome objections and close and so forth, right? You can teach anyone who's smart that stuff, but I can't teach you to have a sense of urgency. I can't teach you grit, to being willing to do, whatever it takes ethically to do the job successfully. So those are the things from an intrinsic standpoint. What we're really doing with personality assessments is finding that intrinsic motivation, which, by the way, from a manager standpoint, that stuff's in place forever. Where the extrinsic stuff, right? As soon as they win that bonus, now you got to figure out what's the next shiny object that's going to motivate them.
Yeah.
Now, ideally, you do both, but intrinsic stuff you put in place when you're hiring, when you hire effectively using these tools, and that part's taken care of. So that's one. Second thing, and this goes to retention for any roles, whether it's sales or anything else, is that, well, a couple of stats. Over 33% of all new hires don't make it past the first 90 days, right? This is worldwide.
Yeah.
Number one reason are the I don't knows. I didn't know I had to do this. I didn't know I had to work with this guy. I didn't know I wasn't going to have those resources I had at my last company. We use these tools, which is part of what made me an A player. You don't give me that stuff here, I may not be an A player here, right? So it's the surprises. So part of retention starts in the hiring, and most hiring is done one-sided. It's, hey, I need someone who can close $1 million, a year, or $100,000 a month, or whatever it is the goal is. Can you do that, right? And it's, what I need. And what they don't think about is, what does a candidate need? What do they want? What are they looking for, right? And if you want your retention rates to go up, you got to not only make sure that they can do the job, but that they want to do the job, that they're going to enjoy this stuff. So I'm a big fan of hiring people who don't have industry experience. I'm not set on not hiring people that do, right? But as long as they're smart, they're coachable, they can learn, and they have the right behavioral attributes, I can train you to sell, right?
Yeah.
But I've got to make sure that that you understand what this job entails. So if I'm going to hire someone who doesn't have industry experience, you do not get hired unless you go on a ride along with one of my sales reps. I need you to see exactly what it is you're going to be doing, right? Not from a learn how to do it perspective, but is this something you can see yourself doing every day? Are you going to enjoy doing that, right? And spend a couple hours with that rep in the car talking about all those kinds of things, the good, the bad, right? To the point where I almost try to talk people out of the job during that, particularly salespeople, right?
Yeah.
Because do they just fold and go, oh yeah, you're right, I don't think I'd like this, or do they try to sell me and convince me, no, dude, I'd love this. Here's why, right?
Yeah.
So then you're kind of testing their sales ability. But if you do that, right, and they have an exposure and they say, yeah, I've seen it, I can see myself doing it, I want to do it, your retention rates right there will go up. Two is what I said, if you don't just teach them how to sell, help them understand the big picture, where the leads come from, how they're generated, what their teammates do. One of the other things we do, we send them out on a job site, on an install or two, so they get a sense of, oh, when I sell that window, what happens then? How's it put in? And then build the relationships with the installers, the PMs, so that, so your PM say, hey, so here's my cell phone number. If you run across a problem like this, call me. Let's collaborate and talk about it. So you sell something that's a win-win for all of us, right? You will find those things will increase your retention rate. But more than anything, Joe, is the number one reason people leave jobs is they felt it was a dead end. It was stagnant. I don't see any growth opportunities for myself, right? I'm bored doing the same thing, right? So the key to that is there should always be a defined career path for every person, no matter what it is. And it could even be, hey, you're going to start off as a salesperson 1. Then you're going to go to a salesperson 2. And with that comes, compensation rewards, whatever, bigger commissions, however you do it. And then maybe the next one is you're going to be a sales lead, where you're the one that's going to start taking people on ride-alongs. You're going to start teaching a topic or two in the sales meeting, right? And then you teach them how to do those things. But with that comes some more rewards and responsibility, right? So, and then from there, maybe you become an assistant sales manager. And then from there, you go to a sales manager when that opportunity opens up. So in other words, every position should have a defined career path so they know what's next. And there's got to be a process in place for them. How do I get there? So both for the manager, how do I train them on this stuff, right? And more importantly, how do I assess, are they actually learning and applying it effectively, right? So if I always, as an employee, if I always know what's next, how to get there, and there's a process system, and I know you as my manager is helping me to, coaching me and helping me learn, why would I leave that situation?
Yeah.
Right. But when I ask people, why did you leave your last job? Number one reason I hear is it was a dead end. I didn't feel there was, any growth left for me. I've maxed out. So that is the number one thing that leads to retention. But all those things are important, but that's probably the bigger one.
That you just brought up, we could do a whole episode on that last point you just brought up, because it's twofold. It's not just the employee, it's the employer. We run into companies all the time where they constantly are having to react to fill a void on a management role in sales, right? Somebody, whatever. It could be a lot of reasons, but sales manager leaves. The next man or, next person, isn't up. Because, again, to this concept, this would help that tremendously. Because you also may have, and this is something that we don't think about it, and I don't want to freak anybody out when I say this, but the military, if I need a 5-star general, I can't go recruit one from from dentistry, right? They have to come up through the ranks.
Yep.
I don't even know if they can switch branches, but it's got to come up. Now, does that mean every guy and gal out of boot camp wants to become the next 5-star general? No, but that path is laid out for them. At some point, they'll say, I'm gonna hold here and stay a rep or stay an infantry person. And again, that would be, it's the biggest, it's a huge hurdle, especially if a company has extreme growth. They can't find that next leader because they didn't they weren't proactive in developing that person day one.
Exactly. And then there's another piece of that too, Joe. The Peter principle.
Yeah.
Right. We promote people to their level of incompetency. Right. I take my top sales rep because they were great at selling. I make them the sales manager without any training or idea of what is really involved in being the sales manager, which, as you know, is a completely different job. Right. And then you set them up for failure and they fail, right? And then not only you lost not only your best rep, but now you also lost your sales manager, right? Whereas if what I said, hey, great, you're a great rep, right? Now let me teach you how to go to the next steps. How do you become a good trainer? Then how do you become a manager, right? So that should be at least depending on the person, their background, but let's assume they have no experience in management. It should be at least about a 12-month training coaching program before you turn over the whole sales team to that person. Otherwise, dude, you are just rolling the dice and taking a huge gamble, right?
Big time. I had a great conversation with a CEO earlier this week about this topic. Well, the one side that always comes up, can a great sales rep be a go on and be a great sales leader? And everybody tends to say no. And I don't, if the expectations are clear, because, and my ultimate, kind of reasoning behind it is you're going from being selfish to selfless, right? I got to win through people as a manager versus in this space, especially, I really, I actually encourage a little bit of selfishness from our reps because they need to stay focused on them and what they need to get done. But if expectations are clear and like you said, that number one reason of I don't know or I didn't know, that's the difference. And then they just make a clear answer. I mean, it's a clear decision then if they want to continue to pursue that path. And then I think you had mentioned it, highlighted, but that idea of giving a peek behind the curtain before it's set in stone, best idea. Hey, let's start with some things that you're going to be expected to do, and let's see where we stand there.
Yeah, so that kind of goes back to Joe. We talked about, does the person want to do the job? Not just can they do it, but do they want to? Well, if you've never done it before, how do you know if you want it? So all that rep sees is, bigger title, prestige, a bigger paycheck possibly on the salary. But as you and I know, top reps usually make more than the sales manager does, right? So if money's your pure motivation, you might want to stay in sales. And that's kind of that mindset. You have to understand, what is a sales manager's job? Well, it's really about being a coach, a mentor, a trainer, right? Is that something you want to do? And if you've never done it, how do you know you want to do it, right? And recognize you may have to make less money than than you were making as a sales rep. At least initially.
It still shocks me, Mike. I'm dead serious. Out of what guys that I talk about, they again that I know. Well, what's wrong? I was making more money as a rep. Not be Helen Keller could have told you that.
Yeah.
I mean that respectfully, but you know what I mean. And you're like, how,
yeah.
That expectation wasn't there, and I'm not saying eventually you won't. I mean, again, you're choosing the path of leadership because you're looking, especially frontline sales management, which I'll just bluntly speak, in our industry, it's the armpit. It's the hardest role, I think, in the org, or the most demanding. And I'll battle that with anybody, right? But it's because it's not, I don't want to end here. I got to go through this to go there. So
well, for what it's worth, what I have experienced and found is the top reps don't make the best sales managers. It's the average consistent rep that makes the best sales manager.
Yeah.
Right? Because I can count on them. If they take someone out, they're going to probably close something or at least have a good experience, right? Where that top rep, he may close something, but I don't know if he's going to teach them anything or show them anything there. And this comes back to the science too, Joe. There's science behind why that is. If you look at the behavioral attributes of a top rep, well, number one, you got to be very independent because you're out there on your own most of the time, right? And you said selfless, but it's a me world. Like I got a quota, I got to close this deal so I can make this money. That's the mentality. When you're a sales manager, it's a team mentality, not about you. It's about them, right? You come last. Sometimes the ego with top reps have a hard time stepping back like that.
Yeah.
So number two is, most people think that top reps are extroverted, right? And we know for a fact that they're not. They're actually ambiverts, those people that fall in the middle of an introvert and extrovert. And the reason for that is extroverts have a need to be liked by other people, which means they take rejection personally. And when they start not closing deals, they get really down on themselves. Then they start worrying about, my manager's not going to like me, right? So where an ambiverted person, right, doesn't really care about what other people think of them, right? It's like beyond what it takes to close the deal, right? Yeah. But as a sales manager, it is about building those relationships with those people, right? And if you don't care about other people think about you, you might have a little bit hard time being a good mentor, coach, and having any empathy for those people, right? The sense of urgency I talked about earlier, right? Those people, a good rep has an intense sense of urgency and results orientation. Now, a sales manager needs to have some of that too, but they also need to have a bit of patience, right? Because if you're not patient enough for that rep's learning curve, right? And understand some people it takes longer than others, you're going to be too quick to fire people rather than looking at, well, did I really give this person an opportunity? Did I spend the time training and coaching them, right? And that individualistic thing approach too, hey, come with me, Joe. I'm gonna show you how to do this. But then I do everything, right? You might learn something there, but as opposed to, Joe, you lead the call, but I'm gonna be there to back you up and support you. And those top reps have a hard time taking that back seat, right? So it's all those behavioral attributes that are the hardest transition from being a top rep to a sales manager. So if you look at those aspects, your decisions on who you promote, how you promote them will become much more effective, and you'll be more successful in doing that.
You brought up at the beginning about the behavioral assessments being used, more importantly, after the hiring process. This is one of those examples. So if I'm in a situation where I see behaviorally, technically, the on the assessment, it's not aligning for what we historically see as someone who's going to want to do the job. That assessment then allows me to attack those areas to help that person improve if they truly do want the role, or the attitude and the efforts there. you know, you don't want to obviously not hire them maybe. And, I guess I want to kind of bring up a question. This is where it gets touchy feely. I've only seen one person, and don't get me wrong, that MPS, I learned it and I still don't, right. But I saw a person that was so far skewed off of ideally at the time what we, for the little I knew, but what we looked for on the on the graph, right? That's my graph for the role. And this person's going to be listening to this episode. I'm almost certain of it. He's hands down one of the top sales reps culturally and performance wise to this day. If you would have looked at, and again, I can't take any credit. I didn't hire him. He was already there, but I did eventually work with him. So I got to see his MPS and to, understand what, and I'm telling you, man, this thing was, engineer / comedian. Like, it was something crazy. You're like, what in the world? But not in-home sales, first sit close.
Yeah.
Well, what do you do? You take that chance? Because again, the person, I'm assuming, I didn't hire him, so I don't know, but I'm assuming he interviewed well and probably showed his competitive side. Maybe, I don't know what they saw, because if you're looking at that MPS 90, again, I know you can't make that the ruling, the reason why you don't, but what do you do?
So what do you do if what?
Give me a little. You have somebody that you're looking, again, that is so far off on that behavioral assessment, but you're interviewing them and you're like, "Whoa, I like him or her."
Yeah.
But this, how do you flush out or understand? And
yeah, so if I understand what you're asking me, so it kind of comes back to what I said earlier about, like understanding how these tools work. Right. So as we said, it's a science. It's psychometric science or behavioral science. But what you have to understand about that science is it's a close as good enough science.
Yeah.
It's not an exact science. Right.
Yeah.
So for example, I don't care if you're using the DISC, the MPO, the predictive index, whatever tool out there. Right. Every one of these tools has what we call a 1-point variable, meaning anytime someone takes it, any of those graph lines could go up or down a point or two. And depending where it started, that could be a dramatic difference or it could be a minor difference, right? And that's okay. But as long as they're in the ballpark, right, of what you're looking for. Then, and you should, and again, going back what I said, you never should just make a hiring decision based on the personality profile, right? There's lots of factors that go into it. They either have the knowledge and skill, or you are able to teach them, right? And you have a structured training program in place to teach them the knowledge and skill. And as long as they have the behavioral requirements that are within the ballpark, right? It doesn't matter that they're a perfect fit to it. What's more important goes back to what I said. Everybody you hire, you got to make sure they're smart enough to learn and they're coachable, right? And again, if just you're a little bit off on the profile, I can coach and mentor you to bring any of those traits up or down a little bit. Like, hey, you're a big extrovert. You need to rein it in a little bit. Stop talking so much, right? I can coach around that. Or, hey, you're an introvert, and that's your hindrance of being a good rep. You need to notch it up a little bit. Be a little friendly, right? When I was at that same company you and I worked at, we're talking about one of the first ride-alongs I went on was with one of their top 10 reps. Wasn't their best rep, but he was up there. And when I went out on the ride along with him, I learned why he wasn't at the top, right? And the reason why as we're approaching the house, he says to me, he goes, Mike, all that crap they taught us about, building relationships and bonding with the person. He goes, yeah, I don't buy into any of that crap. He goes, I'm who I am. I do what I do. Take her to leave it, right? I was like, all right, that's interesting. So we go up, we knock on the door, and the guy that answers is a big extrovert. You can tell right away, hey guys, how you doing? How was your day? Come on in. Can I get you something to drink? And you want to have a seat somewhere? He was very outgoing, very friendly, and he was trying to make the connection with us. This rep is as serious could be, Joe, and He's like, no, just point me to your kitchen table. Let's sit down. Let's get down to business. Right. And he maintained that throughout the whole thing. Needless to say, he didn't build a relationship. In fact, he turned the guy off and didn't close the deal, which then got turned over to Rehash and they closed it.
Yeah.
Right. So, but again, as long as the guy wasn't willing to be coached, right? And that was the difference. He was good, but the difference in being great was that unwillingness to be coached, right? So if you focus on when you're hiring, are they coachable? Are they trainable, right? I can coach a little behavioral change in you. Now, if you're the complete opposite, right? Like I need you up here on the scale and you're way down here. That's not coaching. That's trying to make you into somebody that you're not. Right? Yeah. You're not going to change intrinsically who that person is dramatically like that.
Yeah.
So that's the only time I say, don't hire someone based on a profile is if they are complete opposite on all factors, not just one factor. And that's one of the challenges I have with the DISC tool. They kind of teach, focus on, that D. We need high Ds, right? Yeah. Well, if you understand how to use these tools properly, you're like, that D means nothing unless you know where the I and the S and the C is in relation to it and how it impacts that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. So if all four of those traits are the complete opposite, like big degrees of difference, yeah, that's not coaching a little bit. That's trying to make somebody who they're not, and that's never going to happen.
Yeah. So, yeah. No, that's do you probably answer? I asked you earlier, and I just want to make sure. When are you doing the? When do you recommend you do the profiling?
Well, you should do it in your hiring process. Like it's one of the first.
No, but I mean, like before. Like, do you mind real quick if you don't like high level? If you can just say, so you do a phone. You get a candidate that calls in off an ad. What?
Yep. So we do either a phone screen or a quick Zoom call. I like to do Zoom because I want to see what they look like, how they present. Right. It takes a little more time than a quick phone call, but that's okay. I'm not in a rush when I'm hiring. I want to do a great job, not get through it quickly, right? Yeah. So I do maybe a 15, 20 minute. If it goes well, I might go to 30 minutes on the screen. Then I explain the hiring process that they're going to go through. So I say the next step is if you agree after we're done here and you want to go through it, I'm going to send you 2 assessments. I'm going to send you a knowledge and skill assessment. So let's say I'm hiring a rep, right? 6 or 7 questions you're going to ask about sales, right? And your expertise around selling. Then I'm going to send you a personality profile. It'll take you about 10 minutes to complete. When I get those back, right, then I will evaluate that and determine if you're going to move to the next step. The next step is a 1-hour Zoom video interview, right? And I tell them, I said, we're not trying to make a hiring decision on that meeting. This is just more of a meet and greet. Because what I've learned and what you have to be aware of, particularly in today's world more than ever, right? Now that we've got AI and all those other resources, Google and stuff, they could fill out that assessment. It'd come back perfect, right? Well, it's because you put it into chat, GPT, or you Googled the answer. I called my friend Joe. Joe, how would you answer this, right? Yeah. So that 45 minute to an hour Zoom call, one of the things I'm doing, I'm looking for cultural fit. 2, I'm trying to assess whether you're trainable and coachable. And 3, I'm trying to confirm, do you really know what you wrote about? So Joe, hey, one of the questions we asked you about was put in the sales results you achieved, right? And you answered, I always overachieve my quotas. Well, I'm sorry, I've been in the business a long time. I've never met anyone who always, I would have rather had someone tell me, hey, I'm like 93%, right? Yeah. 87%. But I'm consistent at that.
Yeah.
So what I do then is I ask them and say, hey, like walk me through your sales process. When you approach the door, right? Just like you asked me, what's the hiring process? I ask them, walk me through your sales process if they have that experience, right? Yeah. That's how you then confirm, do they really know what they wrote about or did they Google it or chat GPT it? And all I'm trying to do on that call is not make a hiring decision, but just determine, is it worth going to the final step, which would be the in-person. In person, I'm going to spend as much time as necessary. It's a minimum of 2 hours. First half of that interview is for you, the company. Is this person the right person? Are they a cultural fit? Do they have the knowledge and skill? Are they smart enough to learn what I'm going to teach them? Are they coachable? Right? And that if you do it right in the structured way we teach, you can figure that out in the first hour on top of the other interactions you've had. And then so I'm in my mind thinking, yeah, all right, you know what? This guy's got potential. I think I want to move forward with him. Then you switch gears. Remember I said hiring's all done one-sided? That second hour is now to help you make a good decision. Joe, let me walk you through our processes. Let me walk you through what our training looks like. Let me walk you through what the tools and resources you will or won't have to do this job. I even tell them, hey, as your manager, right? I know that sometimes I can be, very direct and straightforward. Sometimes it comes across as condescending or rude to some people. I don't mean to come across that way. In my mind, I'm being efficient and effective. But people have told me it comes across this other way. So if that's going to offend you, let's figure it out now rather than a month or two after I hire you, right? Because I'm even willing to, if you say, pull me aside in private and say, Mike, that was a little rude. I'm willing to listen and open because I'm trying to get better at that. But intrinsically, that's who I am, right? Yeah. So I go through all that stuff, even to the point where they say, are you trying to scare me away? And I say, yeah, if what I'm describing to you now about the job and the company is going to scare you away, let's figure it out now rather than a month or two after I hire you.
Yeah.
So you help the candidate make an informed decision. So at that point, at the end of that in-person interview, you have enough data, they have enough data that if you want to make them an offer, then they accept understanding, knowing exactly what they're getting into. And again, the caveat difference would be that rep that has no experience, but I'm willing to train, right? So I'm really focused then on the behavioral attributes and really on the learning and coaching piece. And then after that in-person interview, I'm going to say, I want you to go on a ride along with one of my reps so you can see exactly what this job is. After that, we'll meet again and have a debrief. Before that, though, I even have a checklist that I give the sales rep to say, hey, I want you to talk about these things, observe how they do this, right? Any red flags for you that I need to be aware of that happened out there when you were with them. And take all of that data into consideration to make a highly informed hiring decision.
The one thing you taught me, I implemented right away. Sometimes it's not even anything groundbreaking. I mean, maybe for somebody, but I don't want to. Somebody could be listening, going, "Yeah, we already been doing that for years." To me, whether it was a reminder, I don't know, but that email that after the day after the interview,
the follow-up email, yes,
follow-up email with here, I need your answers to these two questions. And I need you to send it at 9 a.m. on the dot or 8 a.m. on the dot.
Right.
Don't send it to me today. I want you to really think about it, the answers to these two questions. And then, again, I want you to send it at 8 a.m. I can't tell you how many people can't do that.
Yep. Yeah, so for the listeners, so the context around that, at the end of the video interview or the in-person interview, both of them, we say, based on what you learned today, are you still interested in exploring this further? Yes, I am. Great. Here's what I want you to do. Go home tonight. Think about it. Talk to your spouse, your dog, whoever you confide in, pray on it, whatever you do.
Yeah.
I really want to make sure that this is an opportunity that you really want to pursue and a company and organization you want to be a part of. Then by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, send me an email and tell me why specifically you want to be a part of our company. That's number one. The number two is, tell me why I should move forward and select you, right? And then I ask them too, and this is important, I say, are you clear on what I want you to do next? Yes, I am. Great. Will you repeat that for me, please? Right? That piece is critical too. And by the way, what we're doing there is that's one of the ways I see how coachable you are, right? Yeah. Will you follow my instructions? Because most people want to send that email right away.
Yeah.
We just had this happen. We were hiring a call center manager for one of our clients, right? And one of my recruiters gave that instruction explicitly to the candidate. He said, yep, I understand. An hour later, he sent his email and he said, P.S. I know you told me to wait till tomorrow, but I was so excited about this, I wanted to just respond right now, thinking his enthusiasm would overcome it, right? Well, the client told my recruiter, I don't want to move forward with this guy. She was like, why not? He said, because he's not coachable, right? So my recruiter comes to me and she goes, can you believe that they're not going to hire this guy because of that? Everything else was perfect. And I said, yeah, I can believe it. It's an indicator of a problem. And she goes, are you serious? I said, yeah, here's perfect proof. She was only been with me 3 months, right? I said, you did the same thing. And I made an exception with you And one of the only challenges I have with you is you're really not that coachable, because every time I try to coach you, you get an attitude. You feel like I'm picking on you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I said, there is proof of why I try to stick to my guns on that rule. But that's why that's there. That's why we do that at each time.
This is in today's selling environment. And I mean, if there's something that's changed around selling in the home more than ever, it is the detail orientation that's required. And I jokingly say, but sometimes I really do mean it, I wish I could go back to paper because of all the checklists required,
Yep.
some of the tech that's required these days. I mean, yeah, it makes for a better experience, but you got to be dialed in or it's going to make for a worse experience if it's not done right. And
Right.
and those are details where I just say, I was just thinking about this the other day. 18 years ago, I started in this industry, and it was on paper, and you could get away with hiring the quote unquote closer. Don't worry, we'll handle the details, right? Or we'll it's not detail oriented, and sales reps make mistakes in the paperwork and this, that, and the other, and we kind of let it slide. You can't survive as a manager because you hire too many of those. You're just going to have a miserable life.
Exactly.
And so that email, the other thing that you just mentioned, and I know we're going over, I'll stop here quickly, but the other thing you mentioned I thought was great was, and again, maybe I do, maybe I don't do this, but asking that question, based on what we discovered or talked about so far, are you still interested in pursuing this role? Because right then and there, you don't have to be the one that says no to them when in reality, they weren't going to take it anyway.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, less, so that's a good step, but I'm just shocked at how many don't, like you said, send it at 10 o'clock. You asked it for 9 in the morning, 10.
Yep.
Like, how you do anything is how you do everything. It's going to rear its ugly head at some point.
Yeah. Well, and just another one real quick, and I know we got to wrap up, but just because people always ask, well, you kept saying, how do you know if they're coachable, trainable? I said, build it into the hiring system. That's one of the ways. Another way, from the screening call. Right? I say, Joe, I'm going to send you these 2 assessments, knowledge, skill, and a personality assessment. It'll take you maybe 30, 40 minutes to complete them both. When can you get that done, Joe? Right? And you say, I can get it done tonight. Sometimes I say, look, it's Friday. I don't need it, till Monday morning. So can you definitely get it to me by Sunday night? Yes, I can. Right? All right. So Joe, you're going to get me both of those assessments back by Sunday night. Yes, I will. And then you don't do it. Right? And I don't get it till Monday sometime, maybe Tuesday. Right? Well, right there is red flag. It's like, dude, I asked you when, you told me. So now I have the concern, are you a person that does what he says he's going to do when he says he's going to do it? And in the hiring process, you would expect someone to put their best foot forward. So if I'm seeing these signs during the hiring process, right? But, it's only going to either stay the same or it's going to get worse when you're on the job. I rarely ever see it get better, initially. So that's a key thing. And those are some of the ways along the way. You're always giving them little assignments to see, are they trainable and coachable?
I was talking with a group of leaders the other day, and I mentioned this word. My word for 2026 is tolerate. And I said, you want to fix what where you failed in 2025, just change what you tolerate. Right? And if you tolerate letting a guy or gal do what you just did there, that's what you made that decision.
Right. Yep.
And
if you're chasing people because they didn't get back to you, and it's like, Joe, I'm calling you back. It's Tuesday. You said I'd have it Sunday night. Right. That's kind of a concern too. Why should I have to chase you? But on the other side, you've got to get people excited about wanting to come to work for you. And if you're hiring all one-sided, they're not excited. So it's a give and take. You have a piece in that. But if you've done that properly, then there's no reason you should be chasing them. They should be chasing you.
Well, the sample email you sent me of a real candidate's response, he talked about that in his response. He's like, the culture, you can just feel it in the in our talk yesterday. And I was like, wow. Like, he wrote out, he was already sold on the company.
Yeah.
And he did a very good job in his response to obviously continue to sell himself to the company. So, Mike, I can't thank you enough. And I just want to make sure, obviously, respect your time. And I know I always ask for an hour, and we went long. And I got to do a better job of asking more detailed questions with really got to
Excuse me.
get there at the end. So I appreciate your time. What's the best way for anybody to connect with you?
Yeah, best way is just shoot me an email direct, Mike at XP3 Talent. So it's the number 3, XP3talent.com. That's also our website if they want to go there and learn more about what we do. But shoot me an email is the best way. The book's available on Amazon.
Highly recommend it. It is. I agree with you. It's funny you said that though. Less than 200 pages. It's an easy read, even for me. So that should be a sign for everybody. And there's just nuggets spread out throughout it. And obviously, you can get the book and not necessarily the book doesn't require you to have XP3 talent in terms of system and everything else.
No, it's kind of like I equate it to like EOS, right?
Yeah.
It's like you can self-implement by reading the book, right? But if you want the help, then that's our talent mastery program. We can be there to implement it faster, more efficiently, but over time. And a lot of companies have a lot of good things in place already. To your point, maybe it's just checking, hey, are we doing this correctly, right? And maybe some of the stuff in there will confirm, hey, this part you are, but you can enhance it by adding this little piece.
Love it.
So.
Mike, I can't thank you enough for everybody that's joined us live. I have no idea because of the new software I'm using, who's on, who's not. But at some point, it will. It no matter what is on YouTube live right now on the Windshield Time Live. But appreciate everybody joining in. And again, reach out to Mike with any questions. And Mike, have a great weekend. Everybody have a great weekend. Thanks so much. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate the opportunity. Bye, everybody.